Good afternoon and welcome to the Essential HR Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Gorman, and I'm here today with my friend Lisa Mungovan from Mungovan HR Consulting. And we are here to talk about different HR topics today. And welcome, Lisa. It's great to have you on the show.
Great to be here.
And I wanted to maybe start with um, talking about what you do and kind of giving our audience a feel for what your business is, your background, how you came to be in HR, and maybe start from there.
Okay. Well, I started in private industry, worked in various different industries, insurance, engineering, manufacturing. Last stint was workforce development. And when that job ended, I had a couple colleagues that approached me and said, we've got small businesses that need HR assistance, but they can't really afford to hire a full-time HR person. Would you consider working with them? And I
Mm.
researched it, found out that there was over 25,000 registered small businesses just in Northeast Indiana. And so that started my journey. And um, I help them primarily to start with is to make sure they have a good foundation so that they're compliant with the state and federal laws. They have employee handbooks and forms, and they're asking the right interview questions. If they need help with recruiting, I will help them with that.
Sure.
And then I'm a phone call away. So as issues come up, employee relations issues with COVID, like we had last year,
Hmm.
I worked with them to make sure that they put systems in place that help them limit their liabilities.
Okay. Fantastic. Um, and I know we talked a little bit before we started record. What are some of the I guess the major challenges you're seeing out there, and some of the topics and trends that are going on in maybe the HR world. I know there's so much going on in the
Mhm.
last year, right? With the pandemic and what's happened and the changes, and what are you seeing out there that really should businesses should be thinking about? I mean, I come from an employee engagement, you know, um, retention type of a platform, but what are you seeing out there that are it's really top of mind for business leaders, especially from an HR standpoint?
Mental health, I think, is a big one. Everybody has different ways of reacting to different things, and each person has had a different challenge last year, which continued into this year. Whether it were the parents that had children who were at home going to school while they were trying to do their jobs, um, those individuals who needed to be around people and now suddenly were not,
Mm,
and they were, alone. Um, the pressures of people leaving and others having to take on the extra work because the jobs aren't being filled quickly enough. Businesses being hesitant to fill jobs because they're not sure how their business is going to be. Their
mm,
revenue is a big challenge. The distribution channels have affected different businesses in ways for which they didn't expect, and so people that were used to bouncing back, things didn't happen in that way. We have businesses in our area that actually started producing other products that were more PPE related products or
sure.
signage or whatever it
Yeah.
is that they never did before.
Hmm.
um, from the HR perspective, the recruiting side is still a challenge. If they use an automated system, if it's not set up properly, if it's not doesn't have the right filters, the right extra words, then qualified candidates are not getting through the systems and aren't coming
Mm,
through for people to be considered. Um, the HR people I refer to them as the COVID cops. They added that to their plate in addition to everything else. So they had to make sure that everybody was healthy when they came into work. And if they were calling off, that everything was properly processed,
mm,
for their first 10 days and all of those types of things. Recruiting should be number one, especially when you have positions that are open, but they're managing everything else. And so on the flip side, the candidates are frustrated.
right.
They know they're qualified, but they're either getting a disqualified email quickly or they're hearing nothing. So they feel like their resume is going into a black hole. They really want to work for that company, but they're not getting responses from emails or anything. The recruiters are challenged because they too are trying to be the representative of a candidate who's viably qualified, but they're not getting responses to the business because the business doesn't know if they're going to fill that job, even though they decided they thought they should.
Sure.
So there's a lot of I guess I look at it as a whirlwind. There's nobody putting a pin in it to say stop. Can we do this? Because they don't know.
Right. Wow, that absolutely. And I know you said, at least a little bit earlier, about the mental health
Hmm.
part of it. And what are you seeing maybe companies doing to really combat that? And what trends are you seeing when it comes to the mental health? 'Cause I agree. I think that with the mental health piece, I think that's huge. I think you see people, they have PTO they aren't using because what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? I'm at home, and what are you seeing companies doing to really take that on, and to because it is a major problem.
It is. It is. I think the healthcare professions may have done better right up front by making sure that they had the resources available. They recognized the burnout very quickly.
Mm,
But there's other companies that their culture is such that they truly care about their employees, and so they've reached out to resources to say, what can we say to help encourage conversations or to seek help. When people are always on a call that's virtual rather than, you know, insisting that they see people isn't the best resolution to it. It may just be that they have to have a one-on-one separate conversation to say, how are things?
mm,
Domestic violence has increased a lot based on some conversations I've had with some people with that, which is scary,
sure.
both for the children as well as just for those that are involved. The other thing that, EAP, Employee Assistance Program, is a good resource to have that's available. The But employee those have become a telephone call away rather than going and seeing someone because of not being able to see doctors, so they're becoming telemed. Those are
Yes.
better than just talking to someone, but just talking to someone is also a good resource for them.
Mm,
um, EAP programs are meant to be short-term intervention, and so after you have so many visits, then you're referred on to a more professional um, person that may have a long-term issue with dealing with things. Substance abuses, I've seen trends that that's increased. I've
mhm.
seen that when I've gone to the grocery store. I don't know these individuals, but it just seems like there's a large volume of alcohol being purchased,
Interesting.
and not beer. This is large bottles of
Sure.
all those types of things. And granted, I see them at one time. I don't see them every day, but there have been studies that have shown that that has increased too. And so coping mechanisms, I think those companies that are better with the cultures are the ones that focus on, hey, we're going to do this podcast, or we're going to do a lunch and learn about meditation, or
Right.
we're going to do this about yoga, or we're going to do this about nutrition and ways that you can do this, or let's talk about financial planning, not wealth planning, but your budget. Has
Sure.
your spouse or whoever suddenly lost their job, unemployment's not covering the bills, and all of those types of things. And so it, I think the companies that really value their employees will offer those things and recorded versions of them so that they have them available to them at a date. If it's not right now, is not the best time, but maybe I'd like to watch it tonight at 8 o'clock. Those resources I think are very important.
Oh, that's fantastic information. And then another thing you said, Lisa, that is I find very
Hello,
interesting
this is
as
Dr.
well
Deborah's office.
is
I'm calling to confirm Matthew's
I'm
appointment
sorry.
oh
for
no, you're fine.
today
No, you're fine.
at Wednesday, March
I can't
24th
turn it
at
off.
9 a.m.
Not a problem.
There, okay.
Oh, perfect. No,
We're
no
one of the few
worries.
that still have a landline.
No, not a problem.
Okay, we can
Um,
cut that part.
the part about the recruiting and someone that may be looking for maybe another position, or trying to get through those applicant tracking systems that are out there, because there are so many that are different, and maybe look at different keywords or different phrases. What advice would you give to someone? I think we're switching gears a little bit here, but what advice would you give to someone that is trying to get through those, I guess, gatekeepers, right? To get to
Hmm.
get, to get found, I guess.
Hmm. Hmm. I think, well, number one, keywords are important,
Yeah. Oh, sure.
and you have to think that whatever the company is using these automated systems,
Hmm.
because you don't know.
Hmm.
Changing the resume up to so that it aligns with um, the ad that has been run, so that, and if you have those skills and those training and knowledge, put them on your resume.
Mm,
Don't include irrelevant information. that is not relevant to the position. There are different styles of resumes. There's a functional style that I refer to it as when I'm working with job seekers that focuses mainly on the skills,
Mm,
not on all their responsibilities and experience that they've had in every job, but it's focused on the skills. The chronological is a more common one where it, talks about your current job and then goes backwards. That lists all your different responsibilities, and that's the more traditional one.
right.
But the employers, we really need to know what the candidate can bring to the table.
Mm,
So the knowledge, their accomplishments, their skills are important to have on that resume. And um, try to keep it short. There is no rule about having a one-page resume, especially for people who've had a lot of experience, but it needs to be succinct. If back when I looked at resumes and there were no automated systems, it took about 7 to 10 seconds to do a first blush.
okay.
And then I would go through it in more detail. But the more the candidate puts at the very top of the resume, of course, their name and their contact information, but the skills that are relevant to what that employer is looking for, then it's like, oh, and now I want to read more about this because this might be a viable candidate. Catch the attention. You're really branding yourself.
Mm,
And I've seen also some feedback recently about resumes that have put the contact name and the information in the header, and when the systems get them, they block that out. And so now they don't have the contact information.
interesting.
So it's better just to have it without it being in a header, but the formal header and a Word document, so that they can make sure that they get the contact information. And recently, I've been trying to contact individuals for a position. Um, the voicemail wasn't set up,
Mm,
or it was full. And so I couldn't leave a message. I
sure.
texted them, which I'm a patient HR person. And so I texted them, didn't receive anything from them. I emailed them, didn't receive any contact information. So if you're in the active job search, you need to check your various ways of how people can get a hold of you, so that that is successful rather than, there have been trends. You asked about trends. Ghosting is a
Yeah,
new term where the candidate
sure.
doesn't respond after they've submitted a resume, or I've seen job seekers that are saying that the employers, after they've been interviewed, they don't hear from them, don't hear from them, don't
Mm,
hear from them. And that, there's been some turnover in HR. The person who may have started the process may not be there anymore, by whoever's choice that is. And so now they're trying to figure out, okay, so their quick impression is they're not interested, or they would have gotten a hold of me, but they told me they'd be back to me in 2 weeks or whatever it is. And I've posted some things about anybody that's recruiting to make sure that if you say you're going to get back with someone, put it on your calendar and get back with them,
get back
even
to
to
them.
say a decision hasn't been made yet.
Right.
Because
Just
if
to,
these people are taking the time to viably apply for a position they're sincerely interested in, they're due a response.
absolutely. No,
And,
100%
and
agree.
what's nice about the systems that we have now, like Indeed, et cetera, you can set it up so it automatically says, thank you very much for submitting your resume. We'll get back to you if we're interested. And that way the black hole effect isn't there. They,
Right.
they know that at least someone got it.
Right. No, absolutely. Those are great, fantastic tips. And I wanted to maybe ask a question about e- what I guess maybe technology, but what are you seeing that you think is going to stick, right? From all the changes, and there were a bunch of changes that were made in the last year that we had
Mhm.
to all deal with. But what do you see, sticking and staying around? 'Cause I think that, when I talk to some people, that may have gone back to the office, right? They're okay. Yeah, we're back. We're back
Mhm.
in the building, and yeah, we're wearing masks, but we're back in the building. But then some are like, hey, we're just not. It's always going to be remote. I mean, what do you see happening? Out there, and I guess every company is different, right? And they're going to
It
have their
is.
own policies, procedures, and rules to follow there. But what do you see overall happening with in the next maybe 6 months to a year?
Well, each industry is different. So
Right.
manufacturing has to have people physically at their jobs doing their jobs. Um, the 6 feet distance, some have adapted very well to that, other ones haven't.
Hmm.
Um, I would hope that the cleanliness will stay in place as much as possible, because that helps with the flu and other things, not just the with the pandemic. I think the virtual interviews will continue. I think the virtual meetings will continue,
Hmm.
for those that are currently in working in the office. and those that are still staying at home. I've had colleagues that have been told that it's going to be at least another year before they go back to the office, and some have been told not at all,
Wow.
that they're just going to no longer lease the space. They're
Hmm.
saving the money.
Yeah.
This is working out just fine. Our productivity is up. And that's in sales, that's in marketing, that's in
Sure.
IT. And so I think those types of things I think are going to stick. The caution is to make sure that those that are the leaders make sure that they are checking in with their employees to make sure that the environment is the healthy one for them, that employee to continue to be successful. Um, One of the things that I think um, there's been some influence, I guess is the best way to put it, is if you're not happy with your work environment, just quit. And that's easier said than done.
Sure.
This whole year has really brought out the personalities of individuals for whom they may have acted differently in the office than what they do virtually. And leaders really need to pay attention to those and talk with their employees that are having some issues so that they're not offending coworkers by their nonverbals as well as their verbals
Right.
and their emails and their texts, etc.
Right.
um, in bigger cities, I have a colleague that moved from Fort Wayne up to Chicago, and this was right at the beginning of everything. And there were trends saying that a lot of those that were being used for commercial space would probably end up being retail or home space
Mm,
for housing when you have a shortage of housing.
yeah.
Who knows? I guess we'll
Yeah.
see.
Interesting. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I wanted to get into some of the, I guess, the fun questions here,
Mhm.
and talk about maybe some of the your background and just some of the things that you find exciting about HR. But maybe what do you love most about your profession and HR and guess in general?
What I love most about HR is being a partner with the business.
Mm,
And when I was in a leadership role, being that partner and being the guidance to them on the human side of things,
mm,
not just the numbers and not just but the human side of things. And how do we best accomplish this based on how humans may react? So different types of training processes, different types of drivers that may be different for one person than another on what is important to them to accomplish something. Seeing people accomplish something that they never thought they ever could.
mm.
Seeing individuals grow in their roles, but also seeing individuals exit because it just wasn't a good fit. I don't thrive on terminating individuals. I focus more on what I call positive progressive discipline, where they see the opportunity to correct it if they're willing to correct the situation. And these are
Mm.
the things that we can do and you can do in order to get there. But if it's just not a good fit, it's finding them something else that might be a better fit for them.
Sure.
So I like the variety of HR. When I first started studying, I had a professor that said I wasn't cold enough because HR had to say no to everything.
Mm.
And I remember telling him I was going to change the face of HR.
Wow.
That there were, and that was before the Stephen Covey's, 7 Habits and all of those
Sure.
types of things. There are ways for people to succeed in their roles if given the opportunity. And that's really the way I've approached all of my different positions. When I first started in HR, it was very male dominated in the leadership roles. The
Sure.
females were all in the clerical roles. And I left my first job opportunity or job that I was in because of that, because I saw no potential opportunities and was given great development, great mentoring. And I so appreciate that. And I've grown through that as I've gone along.
Mm. That's awesome. Maybe what advice, Lisa, would you give someone wanting to pursue a career, in the same field as yours?
Well, I mentor HR people. I've got a couple of them right now that are just finishing school and trying to decide what to do. And I suggest they explore options. There are
Okay.
specialties such as payroll, benefit administration, EEO, training. And then there's the generalist role where they have to do everything.
Mm,
And I encourage them, and compensation would be another one, that I encourage them to check out all of them and find out what might be the best fit. In some cases, that may be their step into their first opportunity. It may not be what they want, but it may be the way to get into that company that they really want to work for and strive to do well in that particular role, and then maybe transition into something else as opportunities come available.
Mm, absolutely. And this is kind of a fun question, but what is the one common, I guess, myth about the HR field that you want to debunk?
Hmm. I thought of that when you sent that to me.
Yeah.
I think there are companies that discourage employees from talking to HR.
Mm,
And HR is a huge resource
right.
for lots of different things. I mean, I've helped people find drywallers and carpet layers, et cetera, but I helped a family get resources to get a child out of a cult.
Sure.
I
Mm,
have helped individuals adopt a child that they didn't think they would ever, get that opportunity. And it's not because I know everyone, but I know people who may be able to help. And so I think that would be the biggest one, is that we are very resourceful and in most cases,
mhm.
and we'll be able to help them with that. But we also are just a venting resource. Someone comes in and just needs to vent and then just goes back to work.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
so we can be a neutral venting resource or a resource if they need to get further help.
I love that. That's so very true. I think that I think you're right. I think it's a lot of organizations. It's sometimes scary to go into HR, right? And I think that that approach is, I've seen that approach work, and I think that you're right. Being a business partner, but then being a partner alongside the employees as well is, I think it's huge. And maybe to wrap up here, the final question: what is the biggest lesson that you are taking from the events of last year, 2020, the shutdowns, lockdowns, pandemic, into, I guess we're 3 months, almost 4 months into 2021 now. But what lessons have you maybe brought over with you, to start this year, and what you want to continue to do moving forward?
Well, the word pivot was a big one last
Hmm.
year, and still continues to be that way. And I think that's a natural thing for most human resource people. Okay, we have this, now we have to go this way. Now we're going to do this. Now they changed their mind, and now we're going to do this. So continuing to pivot and be flexible. Um, I helped self-employed people file for unemployment last year.
Mm,
Never would they have ever thought that they would have been eligible for unemployment, let alone that they, how they would do it. And so encourage them how to be able to go into the systems, but know that the money wasn't going to be available immediately. It went from March 15th to May before they got any money.
mm,
So, panicking, feeling like they were going to lose their homes and lose their everything because of everything came to a screeching halt. So
right.
flexibility, I think, is still really important. I think listening is still a very important skill for everyone, to actively listen, um, and to take personal care of themselves. Self care was one
Mm,
that, for those that were doing it, as far as I know, they are still doing fine with it. But for those that weren't and trying to figure out how they were going to work, they were no longer working from an 8 to 5 job. They were working from 8 until whenever because of needing to stop to help the child get their schooling done and then to go back and to do that. For employers, the flexibility where possible, I think, is very important still, and continuing to care for their employees,
mm,
make sure that they are being protected and that they are healthy. Because I've talked to individuals that they're looking for other jobs because they don't feel that their employer had their best interest at heart.
mm.
And
Interesting.
it wasn't productivity, et cetera. It was the keeping things clean and the 6 foot distance. I mean, it was all of those things. And when you have an employer that says they care, but their actions are different than what their words are, those are things that people need to take into consideration.
Absolutely. That's great stuff. And maybe Lisa, how can someone that's interested in connecting with you, how do they do that, and how do they reach out to you and your business?
Well, my email is lisamungovan@gmail.com. And I have a website, which is Mungovan
Mm,
.com. Those are probably the two primary things. I'm on LinkedIn
okay.
and I'm on Facebook as well. Um, LinkedIn more than Facebook, but I share job openings as companies share jobs, I share them out. I'm not a recruiter. I chose as a specialty, and
Sure.
I chose not to be. We have some very credible recruiters in the industry, but I will recruit for my own business. But those are the things that, the email or my phone number is 260-414-8446. I'm that phone call away.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Looking forward to maybe having you on again and talking more about HR, and wish you the best of luck. Thank you so
Well, thank you
much.
for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.